First Contact Protocol. The Galactic Council's First Contact Committee had seen everything in its 50,000 years of operation. They'd welcomed species that communicated through crystalline formations, beings made of pure energy, and even a civilization that existed primarily in four-dimensional space. But nothing had prepared them for humans. They do what every planetary rotation. Council member Zix 427 vibrated in distress, their crystalline form displaying patterns of deep concern. They enter a state of temporary neural shutdown, explained Dr. Venn, the xenobiologist. They call it sleep. Approximately one-third of their daily cycle is spent in this state. The council chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives from 17 different species began talking at once, their various forms of communication creating a cacophony of light, sound, and electromagnetic pulses. Order, demanded High Counselor Eternity in Motion, their plasma form pulsing with authority. Dr. Venn, are you suggesting that humans regularly enter a death-like state where they're completely vulnerable? Yes, Counselor. Moreover, they require this state to function. Without it, their neural pathways begin to degrade, leading to cognitive dysfunction and eventually death. The silence that followed was profound. In all of known space, no other sentient species had evolved with such an apparent weakness. Every other civilization had developed some form of continuous consciousness, whether through biological or technological means. This cannot be allowed to continue, declared Representative X8, their metallic scales reflecting the chamber's lights. It would be unconscionable to permit first contact with a species so defective. We must intervene, help them overcome this evolutionary flaw. Dr. Venn's holographic form flickered slightly as they prepared their next statement. With respect, Representative, you misunderstand. Humans don't just survive despite this trait, they thrive because of it. The doctor proceeded to display a series of data streams showing human cognitive function. During sleep, humans process information, repair cellular damage, and most remarkably, dream. Dream? The word rippled through the universal translator in multiple forms, many species lacking even a concept for such a thing. Yes, they enter a state where their minds create entire realities. They solve problems, process emotions, and sometimes even glimpse potential futures. Every human spends years of their life exploring worlds that exist only in their minds. High Counselor Eternity in Motion moved closer to the display, their plasma form rippling with interest. Are you suggesting that humans have evolved to regularly practice existence in theoretical realities? Precisely, Dr. Venn confirmed. And this ability has given them extraordinary advantages. Their artists create works that move others to emotional states we can barely comprehend. Their scientists make intuitive leaps that seem to defy logic. Their military strategists can envision countless possible scenarios simultaneously. The council chamber grew quiet again, but this time with a different quality. Not horror, but awe. There's more, Dr. Venn continued. Humans can also voluntarily enter altered states of consciousness while awake. They call it daydreaming. They can simultaneously exist in reality while exploring hypothetical scenarios. Every human is, in essence, a natural multiverse navigator. Representative NX8's scales had shifted from their earlier aggressive red to a thoughtful blue. How did we miss this? Our observation protocols were based on continuous observation, Dr. Venn finished. We were so focused on what humans were doing while awake, we misinterpreted their sleep cycles as periods of dysfunction rather than essential cognitive processes. High Counselor Eternity in Motion's form had stabilized into the pattern that indicated a formal declaration was coming. It seems we must revise our understanding of consciousness itself. Dr. Venn, your recommendation for first contact protocol. We proceed, but with a crucial modification to standard procedures. All contact must account for human sleep cycles. More importantly, we must acknowledge that we're not dealing with a species that merely exists in reality. We're dealing with natural reality shapers who spend their lives seamlessly moving between the concrete and the imagined. The Council's vote was unanimous for the first time in recorded history. Humanity would be welcomed into the galactic community, not as a primitive species to be uplifted, but as beings who had mastered a form of existence no other species had even imagined possible. As the council session ended, Dr. Van added one final note to their report. Perhaps it is not humans who need to evolve, but our understanding of what evolution can achieve. In the end, what we perceived as humanity's greatest weakness may be their greatest strength, the ability to die a little each day, and in doing so, learn to live more fully than any species we've ever encountered. The memory merchants. Captain Maya Chen stared at the credit balance displayed on her ship's holographic screen, barely able to comprehend the number of zeros. "This can't be right," she muttered, running a hand through her graying hair. "Nobody pays this much for memories." Her alien passenger, a member named Thesis 9, flickered their bioluminescent tendrils in what Maya had learned was their equivalent of an emphatic nod. "I assure you, Captain, the payment is correct. Your memory of your first day of school, experiencing confusion, uncertainty, and then finally adaptation, it's priceless to my people." Maya turned in her pilot's chair to face the ethereal being. After 6 months of working with the members, she still found their appearance striking, like a cross between a jellyfish and the aurora borealis. But why? It's such an ordinary memory, and honestly, parts of it are pretty fuzzy. "That's exactly why it's so valuable," Thesis 9 explained, their voice a harmonious blend of whispered tones. "You see, Captain, every species in the known galaxy except humans has perfect recall. From the moment of consciousness, we remember everything. Every detail, every sensation, every moment. Crystal clear, forever." Maya frowned. She'd heard this before, but something still didn't add up. And that's bad. Imagine never being able to forget your most embarrassing moments. Imagine every mistake you've ever made being as fresh in your mind as the moment it happened. Imagine never being able to move on from loss because the memory never fades. Thesis 9's tendrils dimmed slightly. "My people have the highest suicide rate in the galaxy. Perfect memory is a curse disguised as a gift." The captain leaned back in her chair, considering this. "So what did you call it? Experience our memories. We can temporarily overlay a human memory pattern onto our own consciousness. For a brief, blessed moment, we can feel what it's like to have imperfect memories, to forget, to heal." Thesis 9 brightened again. "Your first day of school memory is particularly valuable because it contains both negative and positive emotions, and most importantly, the sensation of forgetting the negative as the positive took over." Maya's console chimed with another incoming request. These days, it seemed like every wealthy alien in the galaxy wanted to experience human memories. The trade had become so lucrative that memory merchant was now a legitimate career path for humans. "Here's what I don't understand," Maya said, pulling up the new contract. "If our memories are so valuable, why not just copy them? Why pay for each individual experience?" Thesis 9's form rippled with what might have been amusement. "You can't copy what you don't fully understand, Captain. The human brain's ability to forget, to edit, compress, and even alter memories. It's not just a function, it's an art form. Every human remembers things slightly differently. Every memory is unique, shaped by your remarkable ability to be imperfect." The new contract caught Maya's eye. Someone was offering an astronomical sum for a memory of reconciliation after a long grudge. "That's the real reason they call you memory merchants," Thesis 9 continued. "You're not just selling memories, you're selling hope. Hope that someday we too might learn to forget." Maya thought about her own grudges, the ones she'd held onto and the ones she'd let go. She thought about how the sharp edges of old pain had dulled over time, how even her happiest memories had faded into comfortable whispers rather than vivid shouts. "I never thought forgetting would be a superpower," she mused, starting to compose a response to the new contract. "Neither did we," Thesis 9 replied softly. Your species' imperfect memory has led to something we never evolved. The ability to change, to grow, to become different than what you were. Every human is a constantly evolving story, while we remain unchanging books, every page preserved in perfect, permanent detail. Maya looked at her passenger with new understanding. Is that why the Galactic Council changed the classification of human memories from trade goods to therapeutic materials last month? Yes, your memories aren't just commodities. They're medicine. Every human who shares a memory of overcoming hardship, of learning from mistakes, of letting go of pain, you're not just earning credits. You're teaching the galaxy how to heal. The captain sat quietly for a moment, watching the stars streak by through her viewport. Finally, she reached up and activated her memory recording implant, standard equipment for memory merchants these days. Let me tell you about the time I learned to forgive my sister, she began, noting how Thesis 9's tendrils brightened with anticipation. It's not a perfect memory. Parts of it are probably different from how it really happened. But maybe that's the point. Sometimes the way we remember things is more important than the way they actually were. As Maya began sharing her memory, she reflected on how strange it was that humanity's supposedly inferior memory system had turned out to be one of their greatest gifts to the galaxy. In a universe of perfect recall, the ability to forget, and therefore to change, had become the most precious commodity of all. Rhythm of war. Commander Sarah Jackson stood before the Galactic Defense Council, her fingers unconsciously tapping a rhythm on her datapad. The assembled alien representatives watched this movement with a mixture of confusion and growing interest. The swarm attacks aren't random, she declared, breaking the tense silence. They're following a beat. Admiral Zixvel, their crystalline form refracting light across the chamber, leaned forward. Commander, our most advanced AI systems have analyzed the attack patterns for months. There is no discernible pattern. The Nephilim swarm strikes without logic or reason. Sarah shook her head, still tapping. That's because you're looking for visual patterns. You're searching for strategic logic. But this, she gestured to her tapping fingers, this is something else entirely. She pulled up a holographic display of the last 100 swarm attacks. Watch, she said, then began humming a complex melody. As she did, she highlighted each attack in sequence. The points of light pulsed in perfect rhythm with her song. The council chamber erupted in murmurs. A Quantary representative, their quantum field flickering with agitation, spoke up. This is impossible. We've run every conceivable analysis. But you've never danced, Sarah interrupted. You've never made music. None of your species evolved with rhythm the way humans did. We developed pattern recognition through movement, through sound, through the very beat of our hearts. She expanded the display, showing attack patterns across multiple star systems. The swarm isn't just attacking. It's dancing. Each assault is part of a larger composition, and like any piece of music, it has structure, rhythm, and most importantly, she paused, highlighting the next predicted attack points. It has a pattern of repetition. High Counselor Eternity in Motion's plasma form swirled with intense interest. You're suggesting we can predict their next moves. Better than that, Sarah replied, her fingers still keeping time. We can disrupt their rhythm. Every dancer knows that missing a beat can throw off an entire performance. Every musician knows that a syncopated rhythm can change the entire feel of a piece. She brought up another display, this one showing her proposed counter-strategy. We don't need to overpower them. We need to make them stumble, break their rhythm, and their entire attack pattern falls apart. Admiral Zixvel's crystalline form vibrated with skepticism. And you can predict this because humans can dance. Sarah smiled. Not just dance, Admiral. Humans are the only known species that developed music as a fundamental part of our evolution. We're the only ones who can instinctively recognize and predict rhythmic patterns. Every human child can clap along to a beat. Every human soldier marches in time. We encode information in rhythm because it's hardwired into our very beings. She gestured to the display again. The Nephilim swarm moves like a cosmic dance company, each unit keeping perfect time with the others. But they've never encountered a species that could hear their music, let alone change the tune. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, High Counselor Eternity in Motion spoke. How many human pattern analysts would you need? Every human has this ability to some degree, Sarah explained. But I've assembled a team of musicians, dancers, and rhythmic pattern specialists. We call ourselves the conductors. Give us command of a response fleet, and we'll show you how to make the swarm dance to our tune instead of theirs. The council's deliberation was surprisingly brief. Within hours, Sarah found herself aboard the flagship of the newly designated Rhythm Fleet, surrounded by both human pattern analysts and alien tactical officers eager to learn this new way of warfare. As she stood on the bridge, watching her team set up their unique combination of tactical displays and musical instruments, Sarah reflected on the irony. Humanity had spent centuries looking to the stars, expecting to find advanced beings with incomprehensible abilities. Instead, they had discovered that one of their most basic traits, the ability to feel and predict rhythm, made them uniquely qualified to save the galaxy. Commander, one of her lieutenants called out, "We're picking up movement from the swarm. They're starting their next sequence." Sarah smiled, her fingers already tapping out the counter rhythm that would disrupt the swarm's deadly dance. Then let's show them how humans do the cosmic two-step. All units, prepare for temporal syncopation on my mark. As the fleet moved into position, Sarah could feel the beat of the swarm's attack pattern in her bones. But this time, the galaxy's greatest threat was about to learn that they weren't the only ones who could dance among the stars. And humans, they'd been practicing this particular dance since the first cavemen struck two rocks together and found the rhythm of life itself. The Laughing Warriors. Dr. Elena Rodriguez wasn't supposed to be laughing. The situation was dire. A quantum reactor breach had trapped her and 3 alien engineers in a rapidly deteriorating containment chamber. Yet here she was, chuckling at her own joke about how this wasn't exactly the kind of breakthrough in interspecies cooperation she'd been hoping for. Her colleague, Chief Engineer X-427, a being of crystalline thought patterns and perfect logic, stared at her with all 3 sensor arrays. Dr. Rodriguez, I fail to understand your response. We are approaching a 78.3% probability of catastrophic system failure. Oh, I know, Elena replied, still grinning as she rerouted power circuits. But you have to admit, it's pretty funny. Here we are, some of the most advanced minds in the galaxy, and we're basically stuck in the universe's most high-tech janitor's closet. The third member of their team, a voidborn named Empty Space Between Stars, or Empty for short, rippled their dark matter form in distress. The human appears to be experiencing psychological breakdown. Should we implement emergency protocols? The fourth member, a mechanical entity called Interface, whirred in confusion. Negative. Vital signs indicate Dr. Rodriguez is operating at peak efficiency, despite the apparently inappropriate emotional response. Elena snorted as she yanked out another malfunctioning circuit. You guys really don't get it, do you? Humans laugh precisely because things are bad. It's how we cope. She paused, considering. Well, that and cats falling off furniture. That's universally funny. Inappropriate emotional response as coping mechanism. X-427 attempted to process this concept. This defies all logical protocols. Welcome to humanity, Elena said, finally getting the backup system online, where we look into the abyss and ask it if it's heard the one about the bartender and the quantum physicist. The chamber's emergency lights flicked back on, and Elena allowed herself a small fist pump. C. Crisis management through comedic deflection. Works every time. Later, in the mandatory post-incident psychological evaluation, Alina found herself trying to explain human humor to a panel of thoroughly bewildered alien psychiatrists. "Let me understand this," said Chief Medical Officer Vex-9, their bioluminescent tentacles pulsing with confusion. "When faced with potential death, your species intentionally engages in, what did you call it?" "Gallows humor," Alina supplied helpfully. "Making light of dire situations, finding the funny in the frightening. You know, like how I wrote 'free real estate' on the containment chamber wall while we were waiting for rescue." The panel exchanged concerned glances. "And this behavior, it helps." "Absolutely," Alina nodded. "Humor isn't just about entertainment for humans. It's a survival mechanism. When things get really bad, we joke. It's like," she searched for an analogy they might understand, "it's like running a cognitive bypass around fear. We laugh because the alternative is to be paralyzed by terror." "Fascinating," murmured a quantum intelligence specialist. "You're suggesting that humor actually enhances human survival capabilities." "More than that," Alina leaned forward, warming to her subject. "It makes us better at solving problems. When we can laugh at a situation, we can think about it differently. We can see solutions we might miss if we were too caught up in fear or despair." The panel spent several hours documenting this peculiar human trait. By the end of the day, a new directive had been issued. All crisis response teams were to include at least one human, not despite their tendency to joke in serious situations, but because of it. Within months, the effects were startling. Teams with human members showed significantly higher survival rates and problem-solving capabilities in crisis situations. The humans' ability to find humor in darkness seemed to act as a shield, protecting not just themselves but their alien colleagues from the psychological trauma of high-stress scenarios. Alina found herself promoted to Chief of Crisis Response Psychology, though she insisted on keeping her hands-on engineering role. After all, she told the board, someone needs to be around to appreciate the irony when things go wrong. As she walked the halls of the Galactic Science Academy, she often heard alien colleagues attempting to understand and even practice humor. Most of their efforts were hilariously bad, but she never laughed at their attempts. Only with them, as they discovered this uniquely human way of facing the darkness. "You know what the real joke is," she said one day to a group of students. "For millions of years, species across the galaxy evolved to be stronger, faster, more logical. They developed natural weapons, perfect memory, incredible technological aptitude. And here we are, a species that survived because we learned to laugh at our own inevitable doom." She paused, grinning. "In the end, it turns out the best defense against the chaos of the universe isn't armor or weapons, or even pure logic. It's being able to look into the face of death and say, 'Take your time. I'm still working on my routine.'" The aliens didn't get the joke, but they were learning. And in the dark spaces between stars, human laughter was becoming known as the sound of survival itself. Evolution's experiment. The ancient data core hung suspended in the center of the Galactic Archive's highest security chamber, its crystalline surface reflecting the soft blue light of the containment field. Dr. James Chen, Earth's leading xenorchaeologist, stood before it with representatives from 17 different species, all waiting for the translation matrices to complete their work. "Are you certain about this, Dr. Chen?" High Archivist Eternal Knowledge Seeker's plasma form flickered with concern. "Once activated, this precursor archive cannot be resealed. The knowledge it contains will answer the question we've all been asking." James finished, his eyes fixed on the spinning crystal. "Why humans are so different from every other species in the galaxy." The translation matrix chimed its completion. James took a deep breath, noting how even the crystalline and energy-based beings around him had gone completely still. With trembling fingers, he activated the playback. A holographic figure appeared, humanoid, but with an otherworldly grace that marked it as something else entirely. When it spoke, its words carried the weight of eons. "To those who find this record, we are the precursors, though that name comes from those who followed us. We called ourselves the Shapers, and this is our confession. The figure gestured, creating a model of the galaxy. We arose first among all current species, achieving technological mastery, while others were still forming in their stellar cradles. We saw ourselves as guardians, shepherds of evolution itself. On every world that showed promise, we guided development, nudged genetic codes toward what we saw as optimal paths. Images appeared of countless worlds, showing species being subtly altered over millions of years. We created perfect memory in the Nemers, unwavering logic in the crystalline minds, pure energy consciousness in the plasma beings. Each species was guided toward what we believed was perfection. The figure paused, and its expression shifted to something like regret. But we left one world untouched, not out of oversight or mercy, but as a control group for our great experiment. One planet where evolution would proceed without our guidance. One species that would develop purely through natural selection's brutal efficiency. Earth, James whispered, though he'd known this was coming. Yes, the hologram confirmed, as if responding across time itself. Earth. We watched as its species developed without our intervention. We saw them face extinction after extinction, each crisis forcing adaptation, each challenge demanding innovation. We watched as they developed traits we had never conceived of. The ability to sleep and dream, to forget and heal, to find patterns in chaos, to laugh in the face of death. The chamber was absolutely silent now, every being present hanging on each word. What we failed to understand was that our guidance, while well-intentioned, was a form of stagnation. By choosing what we thought were perfect paths, we denied countless species the chaotic beauty of true evolution. All except humans. The hologram's next words seemed to echo through the chamber. Humans are not special because they were chosen. They are special because they were not chosen. They are what life becomes when it is allowed to find its own way. James felt tears in his eyes as the final piece of humanity's puzzle fell into place. Every quirk, every seemingly illogical trait that had made humans unique in the galaxy. They weren't flaws or accidents. They were the products of pure, unguided evolution, shaped by nothing more than survival's demands and chance's whims. This is our confession and our warning, the hologram continued. We sought to perfect life, but in doing so, we limited it. The humans you now know represent something we could never have designed. A species forged solely by the demands of their world and the roll of evolution's dice. Their seemingly illogical traits, their imperfect memories, their need for sleep, their pattern recognition through rhythm, their ability to laugh at darkness. These are not flaws. They are evolution's answer to challenges we never imagined. The hologram's form began to fade. Our time is long past. But in humans, we see what might have been for all species had we not interfered. They are not the result of directed evolution. They are evolution's experiment in facing the unknown. And perhaps in their unique adaptations lies the key to truly understanding life itself. As the hologram disappeared, the chamber remained silent for a long moment. Finally, High Archivist, Eternal Knowledge Seeker spoke. So humans are. The control group, James finished, a slight laugh escaping him. The only species in the galaxy that had to figure it out for themselves. No wonder we're so weird. Not weird, the archivist corrected, their plasma form glowing with new understanding. Natural. Truly, completely natural. Everything that makes humans unique. It's not because you were designed that way. It's because that's what evolution created when left to solve problems on its own. As the implications rippled through the assembled beings, James couldn't help but appreciate the irony. Humanity had spent centuries looking up at the stars, wondering if they were alone, if they were special. The answer, it turned out, was both yes and no. They were special not because they were chosen, but because they were the only ones left unchosen. In the end, humanity's greatest strength wasn't any single trait, not their dreams, their forgetfulness, their rhythm, or their laughter. It was the fact that they had developed naturally, chaotically, imperfectly. They were evolution's experiment in seeing what life could become when left to find its own way through the dark. And in that experiment lay hope for the entire galaxy's future.